Hey everyone, it's Ivan, kitbadger.com, out here today to talk about the NRL Hunter series. So we'll start with what is it, and then probably talk about kind of how it started, then maybe some things you might want to know before you show up. Coming from a person that didn't really know anything and showed up. Steep learning curve, but we'll start with what is it? Well, it's a competition. It's a game of sorts involving shooting. And the whole emphasis behind it is largely hunting. So what are things you do when you hunt? You glass to find your target, and then you need to make a largely low probability shot. If you want to make an ethical shot, know where that bullet goes, not just, somewhere in the middle of it. Duplex reticle, hold high at 300. Please don't do that. So definitely emphasis on accuracy, and also the entire portion of it, which really has to do with just glassing, and then all of it within a time constraint. And so, again, a shooting game, sport, competition that is really geared and centered around hunting with conveying applicable skills, or we'll say reinforcing if nothing else. The Hunter series actually started with Scott Satterley, who I actually had the good fortune of training with a number of years back. I think probably about a year or two before the Hunter series started. And he, incredibly talented shooter, trained with him at a Rock Lake rifle range. He spent his career in the military doing largely a lot of long range precision stuff, think sniper, and got out, was doing training, and was also competing, very competitive in PRS. With that, sponsored shooter, all that stuff. Really talented. And he was kind of getting burnt out on PRS, not taking anything from it. Like, there is absolutely a lot of value in it, but there's also very much, as I understand it, a meta to it, as far as in this game, you will have you'll have probably like a 25-pound gun, and it's going to shoot some sort of wildcat 6mm round that will not recoil in that, so you can spot your trace and go through, shoot some different positions. So definitely a game, and while there are aspects that you can apply to hunting, pretty narrow with respect to what it actually applies. So he got to thinking and talking through some stuff with friends. I was like, man, how do we get, and especially in the training world, seeing people come that just don't know what they don't know, which that's where everyone starts, and looking at people in the hunting world too, and it's like, man, how can we get people to actually go compete? And so with the idea of a competition, actually go out and train. Because you look at people in, we'll say, archery hunting, 5 days a week, out in their backyard, slinging arrows. I understand it. Most people can't shoot a centerfire gun in their backyard. I get it. But the level of dedication that largely archery hunters have, and then you also have competitions, I want to say in Salt Lake, they'll have like 6,000 people basically come run through these competitions, basically like archery hunting competitions. And he's like, man, why can't we do that for like rifle hunters? And so that was part of the genesis of the NRL Hunter series. And the other part, again, kind of wanting to get away from the game. Also keep in mind, like, NRL Hunter is a game. It's a competition. So with that, you have rules. But through a number of conversations, some of which actually with my buddy, Matt Yore, Sawtooth Rifles, because they were actually working together, doing different training events. And so they would talk about stuff, and Scott would basically bounce ideas off, things like that. And things had come up like, hey, how do we get a lot of the gaming element out of this to where people don't have 25-pound guns that just don't recoil with Wildcat cartridges? And so they actually gathered up kind of a bunch of rules and regulations from a number of different departments of Fish and Game through different states, to include Idaho, I want to say Colorado, maybe Montana too, and created basically the rule set for NRL Hunter. What are some of the rules? Well, actually, one of the rules borrowed from Idaho Department of Fish and Game is your gun weight. So in Idaho, to hunt big game, not legally allowed to hunt with a gun that weighs over, I believe, 16 pounds. And so within NRL Hunter, there's actually two divisions. There's heavy and there's light. And there's also like factory stock division, which I want to say has to be under 16 pounds too. But what that means is your entire gun, to include rings, optic, silencer, bipod, everything on it, minus the magazine, has to weigh respectively under 16 for the heavy division or under 12 pounds for the light division, which, yeah, not a lot of gaming guns under 16 or especially 12 pounds with everything on the gun. This gun is actually incredibly light. This weighs, with everything here, I want to say like 9 pounds flat, which is not incredibly advantageous because it'd probably be better if I like strap 3 pounds to this. But come to find out, this actually is not a qualifiable gun to shoot in the light division. Reason being is caliber. So it needs to be SAMI spec and it needs to meet a power factor. Again, getting away from just gaming. So you can't have some Wildcat cartridge with no recoil. And power factor, I believe, also borrowed from one of the departments of Fish and Game. Basically a mathematical equation that gives you a rough estimate of, hey, we think this would be a good ethical power for taking big game. So if you are shooting, well, whatever you're shooting, you basically have to figure out your power factor. So you will chrono how fast you're shooting, whatever your round is, do the equation, now you have your power factor, it has to meet this minimum. And it also comes into play because while stages are timed, they're not timed like, oh, last shot broke at this time. You literally have 4 minutes on the stage. We'll get more in that in a minute. But because a lot of people can shoot a stage clean and everyone gets 4 minutes, like, what's a tiebreaker? Well, it's actually power factor. So if you want to go shoot 30-06 or something like that and deal with that recoil, then you will break the tie and you'll win. Go shoot 300 Norman mag. Most people honestly are shooting some sort of 6.5 Creedmoor or 308. Again, a hunting cartridge you can use for hunting that you will actually feel recoil because respectively sub 16 or sub 12 pound gun. Then we get into some other rules. Aside from the gun stuff, to kind of try and keep it realistic and get away from just the arms race of a heavy light recoiling gun, you end up with things like everything needs to be stowed. So for example, bipods. And it's funny, again, coming into this not knowing anything, shot like the first couple stages and I'm like, man, why don't I just keep my bipod down? This is way easier because then as soon as I run up, I can actually set my gun down and it'll be standing there. And then if I need my bipod, it's already deployed. Makes way more sense. Well, turns out everything needs to be stowed. Did not know that. Day 2, I made sure I did all this stuff. And keep in mind, again, going back to divisions, there's the heavy, the light, I want to say like factory stock, and then skills. And I went and shot in skills, which is so glad they had skills. I already got crushed. I would have got crushed way worse if they didn't have a skills division. And skills division basically like run what you brought. And in addition to that, they will coach you. Because,
across it real quick.
Man, it's really hard. And what makes it hard is it's actually a really good analog to hunting. So here's how the stages work in general. One. You basically have a 4-minute par time. So there's a stake and everything is shot blind. Unless you're in skills, you can actually go up and check it, see what's happening, fortunately, and get some coaching too. But basically everything is shot blind and you're starting usually on like a downhill slope And so there'll be a stake marker, and hey, as soon as you pass this stake, your time starts. Ready, go. And you'll run, jog, walk, whatever you want to do. Get up, ground your gun. Again, all that stuff, 180 or yeah, don't flag anyone, all the safety rules, all that stuff. Keep it pointed down range, but you'll go up, you'll ground your gun either over at the shooting position if it's maybe where you want to put it, or just right where you need to spot from. And I say need to spot from. Once you get up there, there's actually 3 stakes. You have 2 stakes up front and then 1 stake back here. So it's basically making a like pointy triangle towards you. You'll dump your stuff down. You will pull everything out. It needs to be stowed so things can be slung or just in your pack. For my own part, I would run up, set my gun down. I would then drop my pack. I would pull my tripod out of my pack, get that thing set up, and then I would pull a shooting bag out because I figured I would probably use it anyway, throw it on top of my tripod, create a nice stable position, and then tried some different approaches. One of which using binos to glass, and the other one actually just using my rangefinder, cutting out the binos, because more on that in a minute. But you basically, you set yourself up at the pointing of this triangle, and now you have a left lateral limit and a right lateral limit. And you need a glass, just like you were glassing for animals out there. And it's hard, really hard. One, at this match that I shot, the High Desert Hunter, I think it was, out in Utah, really amazing facility. And you're just looking at rolling terrain, like draws, all kinds of different, just natural terrain covered in brush. And you're looking for whatever it was. Maybe it is 1 target. You're going to shoot from 4 positions. Maybe it's 4 different targets. You're going to shoot from 1 position, or 2 targets. You're going to shoot from 2 positions. Ultimately engaging, ideally, 4 hits. So some sort of combo of one of those 3. And you basically just have to glass. At this match, there was placards. As I understand it, some matches there are no placards. You just have a left and right lateral limit. Fortunately here, there were placards. So you're looking out there and you're like, okay, I see this. It's probably like an 8x10 sheet or something like that with just a number on it. And you're like, okay, I see a 14. Like, cool, like you're on stage 14, so it's somewhere in there. And you just start glassing. And if you've never glassed or don't like kind of get the concept, it's not just like, where is it in there? You basically have to methodically kind of like pie this thing off, looking for whatever the target. And sometimes they are actually animals. Like there's 2 bears out there. They're at 850 yards, come to find out. Or hey, there's basically maybe a little bigger than life-size rabbit, but they're at 300, 350 yards, obscured in brush some. Or maybe there's some yetis, or there might be pistol poppers, but they're out at like 300 or 400 yards. Maybe there's some squares, whatever it is. And so you'll see a placard before you actually start the stage, and that's going to tell you what you're looking for, how many of them, and how many shooting positions. And then when it comes to shooting positions, all of them are pretty much natural terrain, whether it's a pile of rocks. Well, I say that, pretty sure we shot off a vehicle at 1.2, which is pretty much illegal in any Department of Fish and Game. Not supposed to shoot off vehicles. But one of the stages had a vehicle, shot off that. Shooting off fences, all kinds of different stuff. Not necessarily like a prop line like you'll see in some like PRS and stuff like that. But having to figure out a position. So in a 4-minute window, you have to come up, ground your stuff safely, get whatever you need out to spot. You need to find your targets. Could be 1, could be 4. You need to then range them so that you can actually dope your gun, and then you need to engage them from 1 to 4 different positions. So there's a lot going on in that 4 minutes. Cliff notes, day 1 was brutal. Day 2 was actually pretty fun as I started to kind of understand it more. And not easy at all. But really cool in that it is a good analog to actually hunting. Having to go find that target, figure out whatever your shooting solution is, and make a good shot from some sort of unconventional position, like whatever the terrain dictates. Really cool. Like it's really cool. Is it a game? Yeah, it's still a game. It's competition. And just outside looking in, there is for sure a meta to the entire thing. It's like, oh, that's how you should be doing that. By way of example, I showed up, again, kind of ill-prepared and not knowing what I was getting into. I ended up borrowing, on day one, I borrowed my buddy's binoculars. Just some 10 by, I think, Leopold, because I had my Kilo 5K rangefinder, which is 7 by magnification. And I'll tell you basically how I went through stages versus how someone that shoots way better goes through stages. And so for me, what it looked like is I would go up, I would dig this tripod out of my backpack, set it up. Really, well, I'll tell you how I did it, then I'll tell you how better people do it. But I'd dig this tripod out, throw a shooting bag on there, break out these binos, try to find this thing. Hopefully I find it. Once I find it, I then pull out of my pocket, because I don't have all the fancy pouches, put on my pocket my little Kilo 5K from SIG rangefinder, throw it up there, find the target a second time, range it, get a firing solution. And the way I ran it is on this, like, that's my dope, 50-yard increments. I'd be like, 417 yards. I'm like, well, 400 is 2.1, 450 is 2.5. We're gonna go like 2.2 and see what we get. I would just totally wing it. But what people would do is, and again, like, I'm moving back and forth between these different things to where I find it the first time in binos, I find it a second time in my rangefinder, range it, get my data, then I have to go find it again in my actual optic, and then make those shots. And hopefully they're not drastically different, because then I'm trying to remember some math in my head. A lot of things going on, especially for someone like brand new into NRL Hunter. Not to mention just finding some of those targets is so difficult. Just out there in brush, not painted. I mean, they were probably painted maybe a year ago. I don't know. I think some of them got painted fairly recent, but the way that works is everyone starts on the stage and you get what you get when you get to the other stage. So eventually they're basically all the color of lead, same as all the brush back there. Difficult to see. The way kind of the meta works with that, though, is you'll see people and they'll have a tripod slung, because again, everything has to be on. So they'll have a tripod slung. It'll be a competition tripod where basically the leg adjustments at the very top, like really right stuff, and it's one extension. So the tripod's already probably over 3 feet, like the legs, and you can drop it in just one section rather than mine. I'm like, one section, two section, third section, just like boom, down. And then people will already have range finding binos on there. So you have more magnification than just like a 7x rangefinder. And then you will also have your range finding capability right there. So you can glass, immediately get a firing solution, and then you'll see people write stuff on their arm board. Makes a lot of sense, especially on the clock. Then they'll go set up their shooting position and fire those different, like, ballistic solutions, we'll say, for those different targets at range. It's awesome. It's definitely like part of the game. But here's the thing. None of those things are wrong when you go hunt. Like, if we're on the backside of a ridge and I'm pretty sure there's elk over there, yeah, I'm gonna probably get my tripod out, sling it so I can get it off quickly, make sure my range finding binos are locked onto that tripod, and as soon as I crest that, throw that thing down and start glassing, get a firing solution and shoot as quick as I can. it's all actually, even like the game side of it, still totally applicable to hunting, which I think unto itself is actually really cool. I recognize some people are like, hunting? You mean from the tree stand at 25 yards on the edge of the cornfield with my 30-30? That is hunting too. When you come out west, it's wildly different. And yes, there's the whole ethical side of, hey, how far are you gonna actually take a shot? This isn't saying, hey, you should take a shot at this bear at 850 yards with full value wind, holding in this reticle 4 mils left to get a hit. Not an ethical shot. That is the game part of it. But if you know how to actually run your gun and dial or hold for wind, all of those things, and hit largely reduced targets at distances after you find them, all of those skills are completely applicable to being a good ethical hunter. And I think that is really cool, like to move the needle in a positive way. So the original match, as mentioned, put on by Scott Satterley, and then eventually it was handed over, I'm not sure exactly the process, over to Travis from NRL, National Rifle League, I believe that stands for, and they've been putting on a bunch of matches. I think they're really neat, and I also think they're really hard. Gear intensive on a certain level, in that you can show up with a bolt action 30-06 with like an internal 4-round magazine and a duplex reticle. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm saying be ready to just suffer. Like, that would be really hard. And so it is definitely geared more towards like modern hunting guns, where you actually have a usable reticle, in the sense that you can either do work in the reticle for distance, mil or MOA, or you can dial, or ideally it does both. Pretty much everything does now. And same with use of like tripods, bipods, all of that stuff, because these days, which I think is really cool also, because since I found my way to tripods, I'm like, man, why doesn't everyone hunt with tripods? Like, tripods are amazing for hunting. It allows my boys and I to take good ethical shots at distances there's no way we would otherwise be able to shoot at, because we can get a really good, solid shooting position using tripods. And bipods are great sometimes, but very rarely out in field conditions will you find yourself in a place where you can actually prone out on the ground. You might use your bipod over a rock or an obstacle or something like that, but rarely like prone on the ground. And so this reinforces all of those things, and it's really cool. The other thing, I guess, probably worth mentioning is everything goes with you. Like, literally everything for the day is on your person. So you have a backpack with whatever warming layers you need, whatever snacks you need, all the ammo you will need for the day, everything with you, moving from different station, or different stage rather, to different stage. And the way this one was set up, usually they're fairly big stages. The way this one was set up was, I think we shot 11 through 20 on day 1. Day 2, we shot 1 through 10. So a total of 20 stages, which is pretty amazing over the course of 2 days. Granted, started not super early, but we were done generally by around 1 in the afternoon. Just flowed through. It was great. And yeah, ROs. One, good ROs are amazing and make the stage. And not saying there's bad ROs, but the good ROs are really good at, like, they're also competitive. Like, they came out, probably shot during a staff match, really into the sport, and they're really good at calling stuff out, because they are also always playing the game. And so what gets called out? Well, they'll call certain things as far as when you're out there glassing into this infinity of sagebrush, you can ask questions. They can't be leading. They have to be yes or no. So I'm looking out here. I see placard 10. I can ask them, hey, is target 1 just right and down of placard 10? Yes. Okay, thank you. I can look over and be like, is target 2 in between those 2 T-posts out? No. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not target 2. Start looking again. So I can get yes or no questions answered. And then I can also say, what is my time? And they will tell you, this is your time. You have 1 minute and 30 seconds left. And you're like, oh my gosh, or whatever it is. And so that is also like part of how NRL Hunter works, which is pretty cool because you're not, again, it's just you figuring it out up there, but you can actually get help. So you're not just shooting a rock on the hillside. You're like, I'm pretty sure that's the and they'll tell you, because you're like, hey, is the target this? But you have to do a good job of actually phrasing your question in a way they can answer. Otherwise, they just won't answer you. Or shoot in skills. And then you're like, I have no idea where this target is. And they'll definitely help you out, which is cool. I think the NRL Hunter series is amazing on a lot of levels. One, it is a competition. It's a game, but it's also like one-for-one applicable largely to hunting. A bunch of those rules are pretty much drawn, like I said, directly from various departments of Fish and Game. There's like a meta of, hey, what's the best way to basically approach this with respect to gear and all those things. And all that gear is directly applicable to hunting still, like it is. And some of it's maybe more expensive than your regular hunting setup. I get it. Like there's still arms race on a certain level, but I think it's pretty neat. Like I think it is. I think it does a lot potentially for hunters that actually go and train it or go train and then go compete with just building those skills that you'll ultimately end up using in the field. Not to mention with respect to, we'll say entry fee, like the price of the entry fee for respectively 20 stages over the course of 2 days. I want to say a catered lunch on Saturday and then kind of this like banquet lunch on Sunday. Amazing prize table. Granted, sample size of 1, it's the only one I went to, but it was really incredible. And just a good group of people out there going and having fun. Something else that I appreciated is sometimes you'll end up getting squatted in shooting competitions, which is cool. You end up meeting the people you're with. It also slows things down. So the way this is set up is you basically go, you shoot your stage because you're by yourself, it's a blind stage. And as soon as you're done, you just go to the next stage and you're basically waiting in line to shoot the next stage. And it flows because every single stage is a 4-minute par time and you just keep flowing through. Fortunately, I shot with a couple buddies, one of which was Matt Yore, awesome guy, good friend, and it was really fun shooting with him. And then another person got to be friends with, Javier, and really talented shooter. And yeah, had a blast shooting with those guys, just going through stage after stage and being able to have a skills division in this competition. One, if you didn't, people would maybe show up for a match and then never come back because the learning curve is very steep. But having that skills division is really cool because shoot whatever you happen to bring. And there's all kinds of loner stuff too, where people want you to come be successful. They're like, oh cool, you're in skills division, awesome. And actually the match I was at, I want to say like the top ranked shooter, probably 1 or 2 top ranked shooters, shot the staff match. And then during the main match, Saturday and Sunday, each took, I think, 5 people, and it's basically a class. Like, hey, here's how to shoot NRL Hunter. Here's best practices. I'm gonna help you find the targets. Then we eventually kind of crawl, walk, run, maybe shoot these last couple stages blind. If you need help, I'll help you. Really cool. And there's all kinds of gear that gets loaned out. Like, hey, do you not have a tripod? Cool. We have a tripod you can use, or a spotting scope, whatever it may be. And just ultimately a really cool community kind of built around it. And again, while it is a game and there's prizes, trophies, all that stuff, cool prize table, it's actually applicable. It is applicable. Like a really good analog to hunting, because you're gonna glass, you're gonna find your targets, and then you're gonna figure out your firing solution and get those hits. And so I guess I didn't mention it earlier, but 1 target 4 positions, 2 targets 2 positions, or 4 targets, I already said that, 1 position, now I'm lost. You either have 1 target, 4 positions, 2 targets 2 positions, or 4 targets in 1 position. There we go. And total score, total points possible for every stage is 8. So first round impact, you get 2 points. Second round impact, you get 1 point. If you miss your second round, move on. You don't get to engage that again. And so there were a number of stages I got 0. You can check out the video on my experience with that first match. It was rough, but it was still fun. But that's basically how all the point systems work. So for 20 stages, total possible of 160 points, I guess that is. And then whatever ties get broken by power factor. But yeah, overall pretty neat match. There'll be a link down below if you want to go check out and see if there's one near you. And yeah, maybe dip your toe in it. Sample size of 1, I would suggest signing up for that skills division first. But as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.